A single footprint sinks into cold mud beside a river, half filled with rainwater, already blurring at the edges. Nothing moves, no smoke rises anywhere on the horizon. No light flickers in the dark beyond the reeds. For nearly 2 million years, this was simply how the night existed for our ancestors. Absolute, unbroken, alive with sound they could not see the source of. Most people assume fire is what separated humans from every other animal on Earth. But that isn't where the story begins. Long before the first spark was deliberately struck, before anyone understood how to coax flame from friction or stone, early hominins were already surviving nights on a planet crawling with predators, far stronger, faster, and better equipped for darkness than they were. It seems obvious that fire must have come first, that warmth and light were prerequisites for everything else, until you notice something strange in the fossil and archaeological record. Evidence of controlled fire use appears surprisingly late, hundreds of thousands of years after the first members of our genus were already walking upright, cooperating in groups, and spreading across entirely new landscapes. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How did a slow, clawless, thin-skinned primate survive the dark for so long without it? The answer does not lie in strength. It lies somewhere far stranger, in a set of adaptations so deeply embedded in human behavior today that almost no one recognizes them for what they actually are. Picture a small group moving through tall grass at dusk, the light draining fast from an African sky. There is no torch, no ember carried from the last camp. What they carry instead is each other. Group vigilance was the first fire. Not warmth, not light, but shared attention. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies have long noted that humans sleep in clusters, arranged so that at any given moment, someone is likely to be semi-alert. Multiple sets of eyes, multiple sets of ears, rotating through partial wakefulness across the night. A predator approaching a solitary sleeper faces silence. A predator approaching a human group faces the risk of waking a dozen bodies at once. This single behavioral shift may explain something else entirely unexpected. Why human sleep looks so fragmented compared to many other primates. Researchers studying sleep architecture across species have observed that humans experience unusually light, easily interrupted sleep stages, relative to body size and brain size. For decades, this was treated as a flaw, an inefficiency evolution somehow failed to correct. But what if it isn't a flaw at all? What if broken, vigilant sleep was the actual survival tool, refined over hundreds of thousands of nights spent exposed on the savannah, long before flame offered any protection? This is the perspective inversion almost no one expects. The very thing modern humans complain about most, restless nights, waking at small sounds, an inability to sleep as deeply as a dog curled by the hearth, may be an inherited echo of exactly the trait that once kept an entire troop alive until morning. Darkness itself demanded more than vigilance, though. It demanded knowledge. Without fire, early humans could not simply flood a threatening space with light. Instead, they appear to have relied on something almost invisible to us now. An intimate, inherited map of danger, encoded not in memory alone, but in instinct. Consider the near-universal human fear of the dark itself. Children across virtually every culture display heightened anxiety in unlit spaces, often projecting shapes and threats onto ordinary shadows. Developmental psychologists have long treated this as an odd quirk of imagination. Evolutionary psychologists see something different. A landscape without artificial light is a landscape where visual dominance, humanity's primary sensory advantage, disappears almost entirely. Once vision fails, the senses that remain, hearing, smell, subtle changes in air movement, become disproportionately important. A childhood fear of darkness may be less an irrational glitch and more a residual alarm system, tuned across countless generations to a world where the dark, genuinely, was where danger waited. This reframes something ordinary into something almost unsettling. The uneasy feeling of walking through an unlit hallway is not a modern anxiety invented by imagination in horror films. It is an ancient signal, still firing correctly, thousands of generations after the environment that built it has changed. Before fire, the body itself had to compensate in ways that still shape human physiology today. Humans possess an unusually dense concentration of sweat glands compared to other primates, alongside a near total loss of body hair. For a long time, this combination was explained almost exclusively through daytime hunting. The idea that early humans pursued prey across open plains until the animal collapsed from heat exhaustion, while the human body, cooled by sweat, kept moving. That explanation is not wrong, but it may be incomplete. Because thermoregulation is not only a daytime advantage, a body capable of shedding heat efficiently is also a body capable of tolerating long stretches of physical exertion during cooler, safer hours, dawn, dusk, even moonlit nights. Precisely the hours when predators pursuing daytime prey might already be resting. In other words, the same biological machinery that allowed humans to outendure animals under a blazing sun may have also allowed something almost never discussed: nocturnal or crepuscular activity without the aid of flame, using timing itself as protection rather than light. Survival before fire was not passive, it was strategic. And nowhere does that strategy become more visible than in one of the most underestimated tools early humans possessed: cooperation. Not cooperation in the abstract, sentimental sense often depicted in documentaries, but cooperation as a precise, load-bearing survival mechanism. Consider a moment researchers have reconstructed through comparative primate behavior and fossil evidence of communal sites, a group encountering a large predator at the edge of firelight that does not yet exist. No single human could match the raw physical power of a lion or hyena pack, but a coordinated group, throwing stones in unison, shouting in unified bursts, moving as a single unpredictable mass, could. Predators are ambush specialists. Ambush depends on isolating a target, exploiting confusion, striking before resistance organizes. A synchronized human group eliminates exactly that advantage. This may be one of the earliest reasons language began developing complexity beyond simple alarm calls. Coordinating an ambush counter response, deciding in real time who moves where, requires more than a single warning sound. It requires shared intention. Long before storytelling, before myth, before ritual, language may have first mattered as a matter of raw physical survival, an instrument for synchronizing bodies against darkness. This is where the story begins to widen beyond biology and into something closer to psychology. Because a species that must survive constant collective vigilance does not only develop physical coordination, it develops deep structural trust. Modern behavioral research on hunter-gatherer communities has repeatedly documented extraordinarily high levels of food sharing, tolerance of risk-taking on behalf of the group, and social punishment for those who hoard resources or abandon shared responsibility. These are often framed as moral or cultural choices, but evidence increasingly suggests they may be older than culture itself, older than agriculture, older than fire. If survival before flame depended on shared vigilance, shared knowledge of terrain, and shared willingness to risk personal safety for group safety, then trust was not a virtue layered onto human nature later. It was a precondition for staying alive until sunrise. This reframes something remarkable about modern human behavior: the instinct to check on a friend who has gone quiet, the discomfort of eating a large meal alone in front of others who have nothing, the visceral anger triggered by betrayal, disproportionate to almost any modern consequence. These reactions often feel emotional, even irrational. They may in fact be some of the oldest functioning software in the human mind, tuned to a world where isolation from the group was not lonely, it was lethal. Fire, when it finally arrived, did not create these behaviors. It amplified them. Archaeological evidence from sites where controlled fire use becomes consistent shows something beyond warmth and cooking. It shows changes in social spacing, longer periods of shared wakefulness, and what many researchers interpret as the earliest structured storytelling around a stable point of light. But storytelling itself may not have needed fire to begin. It needed darkness first. Every unanswered sound outside a shelter, Every shadow that might or might not be moving, every long stretch of enforced stillness through a sleepless night created something fire later only made comfortable: the practice of explaining the unknown to one another. Long before flame illuminated a cave wall, humans were already illuminating fear itself through language, turning an incomprehensible sound in the dark into a shared story with a beginning, a danger, and an ending survived. This may be the deepest inversion of the entire journey. Fire is often credited as the spark of human civilization, the moment cognition and culture supposedly ignited. But the deeper evidence suggests the opposite sequence. Civilization's raw materials, vigilance, cooperation, trust, shared meaning, language forged under pressure, all of it existed already, shaped across a much older, far darker chapter of human history. Fire did not create the human mind capable of civilization. It arrived to meet a mind already built for it, tempered through hundreds of thousands of nights spent surviving without it. Which returns us to that single footprint beside the river, sinking slowly into cold mud, already dissolving at the edges. It looks like an ordinary trace of a vanished moment. But it is something closer to evidence. Evidence that long before any ember was struck into existence, something else was already burning quietly inside the species that would eventually light it. An inherited alertness, passed from parent to child, a willingness to trust a stranger's warning cry, an ancient discomfort with silence that still, somehow, lingers in every modern hallway left unexpectedly dark. The fire came later. The humans who would need it were already, unmistakably ready.